Hello. Hello. Is my voice audible? Is my voice audible to everyone? Can you all hear me? And just give me a check on the screen, please. So hope my screen is visible. Okay. Right. Thank you. So, good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the third day of our online training. So, we are going to get in depth with the concepts, and today we are going to do something more interesting compared to yesterday's topic, because yesterday's were like kind of basics, and even day before yesterday was like kind of understanding the data types and the environment. Whereas coming back to the day 3, we'll be getting more into the hyphen usage of LabVIEW and most into the multiple datas. So I'm going to show you all that. Fine. So even before getting back into the day 3 topic, I'll just quickly revise what we did on the yesterday's topic. I usually do this before starting the new one. I want to have the flow. So I'll just try to remind the participants or the audience to understand what is going to be the previous topic. What was the previous topic? So yesterday we just started with continuation to loops. We just went on with shift registers. We saw what is a shift register, and we did some basic examples of shift register, how they basically work. We did some of n numbers, and hope it's clear. And moving further, we also tried using what is a case structure, the decision making algorithm. We were trying to see that. And moving forward, we were also trying to use enum, where we were ultimately able to use multiple cases using a case structure. This is what we were just trying to see yesterday. Following today, I'll just quickly move into the agenda to you people. So the agenda will be once again classified into 2 sections. Section 1 having multidimensional data, how to handle a multidimensional data in LabVIEW. That is going to be handled. In other ways, in LabVIEW, multidimensional data will be handled by arrays, right? So we'll be getting in depth with understanding the arrays, how to use them, and where are the use cases of array. Mostly in real-time data, we'll be using arrays a lot. We'll be getting in depth with that. So moving further, we are also going to see how to interface loops with your multidimensional data. What I mean by multidimensional data is, once again, it's nothing but your array. So I'm going to show you how to interface loop and multidimensional data, which is commonly very important. So when you try doing a task again and again and again using a loop, you can log them into an array, right? I'm going to show you how doing that. Then moving further to the section 2, we'll be trying to cluster multiple data types, or in other words, different data types. I'm going to show you how to club them together into a cluster format. That we'll be saying. And last, I'm just moving towards string data type. Why I just go with string at the last is somewhere I want this to be a preparation for tomorrow's session. Tomorrow I'm going to handle something that's more related to string data types. So I want not waste time tomorrow on showing how string basically works. It's hardly going to take some time for me. It's a simple way of representing characters. So string data type, I'm going to show you that also. Fine. So this is going to be today's section. And once again, I just want to inform you all that to get subscribed so that you people can get all the videos notified to you, right? Fine. I'm just jumping directly into the topics. Section number 1, we just move in. What is multidimensional data? In other ways, array. We people have been using array before. So this is not the first time you people are seeing array. We have been using this in other textual programming languages also. Fine. So this is how an array in LabVIEW basically looks like. I'm anyway going to show you how to create an array, how to try to feed some inputs to it. Everything will be demonstrated. But introducing an array, this is how an array in LabVIEW looks like. Fine. This is a pictorial representation of an array. So when I say array, arrays are basically used to confine data of similar type, right? So it's, in other ways, I can say it is a collection of similar data type. We'll be trying to use an array when you have data multiple in number. Usually when we use a numeric data type or any other data type, we can try to feed only one data at a time. The wires in LabVIEW will carry only one data at a time, right? So when you want to pass multiple data, then you will be preferring arrays, right? So as I mentioned here, consider using arrays when you work with a similar collection of similar data, and when you perform repetitive computation. When you want to do something repetitively, then you can try to put all the data into array and try to perform the data one by one again and again. So that's the reason our section 1 second part consists of how to do this with loops, how to interface your array with loops and try to perform repetitive computation. We are going to see it, right? So when I talk about array, the two things you have to just look into array components. I can say it's a component of array. Number one is elements and number two is dimension, right? Elements are your data that make up your array, right? The data that are in the array, right, that are basically called as elements. And dimension is, it's a length or the size of an array, right? So usually we say 1 dimensional, 2 dimensional, 3 dimensional. So that is basically called as an array. I'm also going to show you people how to create multi-dimensional or keep increasing the dimension of array. I'll be trying to show you in this class, right? And when I talk about a dimension, there comes a question, when should I prefer a dimension 1 or when should I prefer a dimension 2 or when should I prefer a dimension 3? It comes into picture. So when we basically prefer dimension is whenever we want to segregate the data from one particular information to the another set of information, we go for another dimension. Fine. When you have one dimension data, usually it is called as a row information. When you have 2 dimension data, it is called as a rows and columns. When in coming to LabVIEW, the third dimension will be called as pages, but it is too hyphen thing to cover in 1 hour session. So I'll be trying to work with you people in 1 dimension and 2 dimension data today, and the same is going to be holded for your 3 dimension or 4 dimension or going further. There's one more reason when people go for another dimension, an extra dimension, when you feel the memory is not permitting you to do it, right? When you ask me what is the memory limit for one particular dimension, it is clearly mentioned here. You can have 2 power 31 overall minus 1 elements in your single dimension. This is the actual limit. So when, let me say you're trying to use 1 dimensional data, you can try to provide this number of information in the dimension, which means that you can see there is a value 100, 101, 2, 3, 4, it keeps going. And how many data you can put in one single dimension, it is going to be, this is the limit. And when you try to finish that limit, then you will be not left out with any data to be entered. That's a maximum amount of data memory permits you to fill in a single dimension in LabVIEW. So what you have to do is you have to go for another dimension. So you have to split the data into 2 types. So on base some consideration, you have to just split them into 2 informations, put them in 1 dimension, 2 dimension, and you can make sure you can have rows and columns together. So it looks like a grid of information. When I say grid of information, it's going to be row and columns of information, right? So moving inside, there is one more thing I want to tell you before starting to create an array and going for a demonstration. There is something called as index of an array, right? So when I say index of an array is nothing but the place where a particular element is present is an index. In LabVIEW, everything starts with 0. Even your index count starts with 0, which means that I'll just go one step back, slide. You can see here there is an array. You can see there is a value 100, 101, 102 and keeps going. You can see the value 100 is on the index number 0 and value 101 in the index number 1, and this is index number 2. It keeps going. I told you in LabVIEW everything starts with 0, right? So coming back now, you can see there is a index display. I have mentioned here there is something called index display. This index display allows you to quickly access a particular index value. What I mean by this is, so you can see when you type 1, the first leftmost or maybe the first element, whatever you see, is the first index data. When you try to leave it 0, whatever you see here is going to be the 0th element, right? So that's the reason I've just mentioned here. Can you see here? So the first element shown in the array is 3.00 is at the index number 1, right? And whatever you see in the second element as a second element, 1.00 is at the index number 2. So now if you ask me where is the data on the index number 0, it is actually not shown in the image, which means that it is not in the visible area. It doesn't mean it is not there, it is there, but you are changing the visible area of an array. It's like scrolling. I could even say it is like exactly scrolling a window. You have been scrolled for 1 element, right? So if I make 10 here, what happens is you will be able to see the 10th element of an array, right? So the element whatever you select, right? Element whatever. So the reason why we have this is very simple. Now let me say you have 1000 elements in an array right now. You want to randomly go check 500th element, or let me say 550th element. You are supposed to quickly view what is the value on that. So what you can do is quickly type the value here. So what happens is your array quickly shifts, or it's gonna move your array elements in such a way you can see the 550th element exactly on the first place. And if you ask me what has happened the other one, they have actually shifted away from the visible area for you people to view, right? So this is what is basically an index of an array. Index of an array plays a very important role. Yes, it plays a very important role. We'll be seeing in a short time how index of the array is going to play a vital role in manipulation your data in array. I'm going to show you that. And yes, index display anyway is for your purpose. You can basically change it to quickly view anything you really want in a list of information kept in an array, right? So moving further, I'm going to even tell you how to create an array. So creating an array basically happens on the front panel. So if you once again do it on a front panel, it's either going to be a controller indicator, as I told you before. You can also do it on the block diagram. That will be considered as an array constant, right? Yes, following next, I'm going to even show you how to create an array constant. But how you do it is, you once again right click on the block diagram. You have seen numeric, boolean, other formats, other data types you can see. You will also be seeing array. There inside that you can see an array function, right? You can drag and drop it. That's basically called as an array shell. You can drag and drop an array shell from the front panel. After dragging an array shell, it will be an empty shell, right? It will be an empty shell. You can drag and drop any object, or it can be any data type. There is no specific data type you're supposed to use for array. You can use any data type for array. Fine. So you can either drag and drop a numeric control into it, or you can drag and drop a boolean control into it. So depending upon the object you drag and drop for the first time, the array's data type gets configured for that particular data type, right? And an array can be either control or indicator. I repeat, your array can either be a control or indicator. Who decides whether an array to be a control or indicator? It depends on the object which you place inside. You can see, I'm just trying to show you, you can drag, pull, this is the array shell. Whatever you see here, this is the array shell, and you can drag and drop an object inside an array shell. When you drag and drop an object, if the object was a numeric control or a boolean control, the array gets converted into a array of numeric data type, and the array will be a control. Same as it is going to be a boolean control or boolean indicator. Depending upon whatever you drag and drop, the array gets configured to particular control or indicator. Fine? Yes? So if you can understand this, I'm going to quickly tell you what is a 2D array, how to create a 2D array. Fine. When you see here a single dimension array, I'll just go back here. You can see this is a single dimension array. You can see only one index display available. Only one index display is available. Whereas coming further to two-dimensional data, you can see you'll have two index displays. This is for rows and this is for columns. You can specify which row, x comma y you can specify. So what happens is your array display element, the array visible area will move to the according x comma y information, right? So now you can see the grid of information. It stores the data in rows and columns. Even here, if you see, this is a 0th row, this is the first row, and this is going to be a second row, and this is going to be 0, and this is going to be 1 column, and this is going to be 2 column, right? Fine. So to create a multi-dimensional array, what you are supposed to do is you will create a single dimensional array. Basically, you will drag and drop an array shell, drag an object into the array shell, so your array will be configured. That's for sure. After configuring a one-dimensional array, by default, whatever you have, or the shell, whatever you have, you can see here, by default, the shell, whatever you have, is going to be a single dimensional array only. But what you can do is you can simply right-click on this index display and say add dimension. You can see that you can right click on the index display and you can specify add dimension. So by this method, what happens is you can see one more particular index display will be available, and you can drag your array into 2D information. You can pull it down. You can resize the array to feed the information you want, right? So you can resize the index display until you have as many dimensions you can create. By trying to right clicking again on this and say add dimension, this will turn into 3-dimensional information, right? So this is how a data basically looks like. One-dimensional data or two-dimensional data or three-dimensional data looks like. You can see that a one-dimensional data has only one, information in only one dimension. Either it's in a row information. You can see it's row, row, row. Row number 0, row number 1, row number 2, and row number 3, right? So you can see I'm just viewing it from the 0th index, right? This is a one-dimensional array. You have only one index display, whereas coming to two-dimensional, you have two index display, right? Coming to three-dimensional data, you have three informations, right? You have three informations: row, column, and pages, right? But you can ask me, you are seeing only two-dimensional data. You can see rows and columns. Where do I see a page? When you ask me that, a page is exactly like your book. A page is basically exactly like a book. It is actually behind this particular sheet of information. This is like a sheet of information. Can you see? This is like a two-dimensional information. It's like a, imagine a two-dimensional array as a sheet of information, right? So a three-dimensional is something like it is behind one particular sheet of information. So you can overlay the information, like how we saw, a case structure yesterday. There was a true case, and behind a true case there was a false case, something like that. You have one more sheet of information behind this, right? So by this method you can have n number of sheets behind each and every two-dimensional information that will consider to be a third-dimensional data, right? If this is more clear to you people, if this is a bit clear to your people, whatever I'm trying to say, I'm going to show you now quickly how to give data into an array, right? How to feed some data into array. As soon as you configure an array, as soon as you configure an array, either a one-dimensional or two-dimensional, for example, here I'm trying to show you a two-dimensional information. Once you configure a two-dimensional information data, you can simply put your cursor on this. You can see there is a, internally there are n number of numeric information. This is a numeric array, that's why you can see a numeric data. If you configure to be a boolean, you'll be seeing multiple booleans information inside a particular array, right? It will be an array of LEDs or array of push buttons. You can design in that way. It need not be once again boolean, it can be any data type also, right? So what happens is you can directly put your cursor into this and feed your information. If you try to put your cursor in any of this particular numeric control and type the data, you can see it will configure all something like this. If I try to put the data here, let me say this is 2, 2, am I right? 0, 1, 2, and sorry, this is going to be 2, 1, right? Sorry, 1, 2. Sorry, this is going to be 1, 2, right? If I configure this to be a value, what happens is the remaining other data which is in front of it will be configured automatically, but it will take a value 0, which I'm going to anyway show you. Maybe if you're not clear, I'm going to show a quick demo, right? So by this method you can try to feed your data into your array, right? So coming back to your array constant, it's going to be the same way how you create a array control or array indicator. It's going to be the same way, but what we do now here is we'll do it on the functions. But I told you in the beginning, on the very first day, the constants are available only on the front, only on the block diagram. So what you do is you right click on the function, right click on the block diagram, go to functions palette. You have a specific palette called as array. In that you will be finding a array constant. So this will be an array constant. This is how array constant will look like. Once again you take a different constant. Once again you will be dragging and dropping another constant. When I say a constant, it can be numeric or anything else. Yesterday on the very first day I showed you how to create a constant from the palette, right? So you can pick a constant and drop it inside. So you can see array gets configured. This is very important. You can see it is a black color. Even yesterday I told you when a shift register was black in color, it means that it is not yet configured for any data type, right? Same as such, even by default your array shell will be not having any data type. It looks black in color. As soon as you drag and drop an object into it, depending upon which object you drop and what is the data type of that object, you'll be able to find out that your array will basically convert into that particular data type, right? Fine. So coming back to the processing of your array, you have a complete set of palette. You have complete set of palette in your block diagram to make a lot of manipulation, a lot of processing to your array, right? So I'm going to show few examples, and I'm also going to show you how to learn yourself if you want it, right? I'm going to show you how to do it. I'm going to show you how to basically learn these functions to learn, start using it in your array. I'm going to show you, but I'll show a very simple example of any one or two of this application. Fine. Moving further, I'll just directly dive into a demonstration of how to create an array and how to use it. Fine. So I'll take LabVIEW again. I'm gonna take a new VI file, new VI. Yes, I'm gonna first show you how to create an array. So what I'll do is I'll right click on the front panel. I can go for an array. Can you see second row, first item, array, matrix and cluster, right? Inside that I have an array. I'll drag and drop an array. This is an array shell. As I told you, this is an array shell. It doesn't have any data type right now. So if you want this to be configured for a particular data type, what you are supposed to do is, now let me say I want this to be configured for a Boolean data type, for example. I'll right click, take a Boolean, take any of this object, let me say a push button or a round LED, anything. I'll just drag and drop this inside. That's the advantage of LabVIEW, drag and drop. I'll drag and drop it inside like this. Fine. And you can try to change the information from here. But you can ask me, there is only one data, how to configure multiple data. When I touch this, you can see I can resize the array. There is a blue color blocks that can resize my array size. I'll pull it like this and I can give multiple information. You can see that you can see I have configured two elements. If I try to configure here, let's just watch here. If I try to configure this one, you can see all the before elements are configured automatically. And they'll be taking a default value, that's for sure. You can see the default values being taken, right? So if you want to configure a numeric data, once again what I'll do is I'll take a numeric indicator this time, not a control. I'm going to drag and drop a numeric indicator. Just watch. I'll drag and drop numeric indicator. When I do that, you can see this is configured to be on the block, even on the block diagram, you can see it is configured to be a numeric indicator. How do you find it? There is an arrow mark facing inward. This was a numeric, Boolean array control. This is a numeric array indicator. Once again, what you do is you can just directly pull this either this way or it can be this way. It doesn't matter. You can pull it either way. And if you ask me how I'm going to show you a two-dimensional information, very simple. As I told you in the PPT on the slide, just touch your index display, right click on index display and say add dimension, right? You can see another dimension is added. Now you can drag this in this direction also, right? If I try to configure this to be 10, you can see anything in front, in before of this particular cell will get configured. You can see it is basically configured, right? So I'll just quickly create another array, take a numeric control, drag and drop a numeric control into it. So I'll drag and drop it and configure it to be multiple informations into it like this. Type the data as whatever you wish to keep it inside, right? Now just closely watch this here. If the value of this, if I say this to be 2, right? If I say this value to be 2, you will be viewing this array from the second index, right? You'll be seeing from the index number 2, right? So if I say 1, you'll be seeing from the index number 1. If I say this to be 0, you'll be able to see from the very first value, right? So this is how basically we'll be configuring an array. Fine. So I'll take a new way. I'm going to show you how to configure a array constant. Right click here on the block diagram. Right click on the block diagram. I'll go for array. I'll take array constant, drag and drop a array constant, right? And if you want any information to be dragged into this array, what you do is right click. I'll go to Boolean. I'll take a Boolean constant. If I want numeric, I'll take numeric constant, right? So I'm going to take a numeric constant, drag and drop it like this. Once again, I can pull it like this. If I want multi-dimensional, right click on this and say add dimension, right? So that I can pull it in this direction also. Fine. So this is how you create a array constant. Moving further, I'm also going to show a quick demo so that you people can understand how this array can be manipulated. I'm taking an array. I'm going to take a numeric control and I'm going to give a one-dimensional information. I'll just randomly take few numbers. Right, I just taken multiple informations here. I can even go for fractional, not always whole number, because it's the orange color data type. I'm right. Fine. So I have an array here. So these data are actually now configured to be an combined information, not a scalar information, combined array information. So I'm going to show you how to use the palette functions. Okay. So I go to array. I have n number of informations here. How you can learn this particular function is, for example, I'm going to show you how reverse 1D array is going to work. Let me say if I want to see how reverse 1D array work, I'll drag and drop it here. And when I touch this, you can see this array input you are supposed to pass. These are some ready-made functions you really have handy so that you can drag and drop it. And what you can do is right click, create indicator. This is a, I told you, right, there is a shortcut to create an indicator. I do it. So you can see there is an array automatically created. I don't create that array like drag and drop a function array shell and drag and drop object into it. I don't do it. So now what happens is this information, the input information passes into this and this gives a reverse of it. Right? You can see whatever data is there, it is reversed. And if you want it to be ascending order, let me quickly show how to do ascending order. Sort 1D array. There is something called a sort 1D array. When I drag and drop it, I'll connect this from here to here. and once again right click, create indicator. When I do it, you get a sorted version, right? You'll get a sorted version. I'll run it. You can see this input information is sorted, right? See, I'm using this from the input. You can see the data flow. Understand the data flow. The input data is parallelly passing to this information and also this information. So you can see 13, 24, 12, 65, 12.8 is passing here and getting processed. If I want it in descending, what I'll do is, it's very simple. I'll remove this. I don't want that anymore. I'll delete it. So I'll take once again reverse and put it like this and connect it from here to here, connect it from here to here. So what is going to happen is your array data will get sorted in ascending order. This basically gives only ascending information, right? So ascending order, and the ascending order, I'm just putting it in reverse, making it descending. So when I run this program, you can see all your data are in the descending order, right? This is how basically you can manipulate with the ready-made functions. But there is other way of doing a process to an array using loops. Interfacing of your array with loops make you use a array in full-fledged. I'm going to show you that now. If you're clear with this, I'll just cleanly move to the next one here, right? So I'll just show you how to create an array, right? So in case if you want to delete some information on array, let me say you have 6 information. If you want to exactly delete one particular value of an array, you can right click on the particular element, and you can have an option to delete it. You can delete it through that option, right? So you can also include some data. You can also delete it in between, not an issue. Fine. Moving further, I'm going to the second part of section 1, interfacing of loop with your multidimensional data. What I mean in multidimensional data is your arrays, right? Fine. So we have seen some tunnels before, right? We were seeing tunnels when you are trying to pass the data from inside. When you're trying to pass the data into your case structure or trying to pass the data from inside to outside of a case structure, you are using a tunnel. Am I right? Even now we are going to use a tunnel, but this is a totally different type of tunnel, right? We are going to use an auto-indexed tunnel. So a tunnel which is actually having an auto-indexing option enabled will allow you to use an array along with your loop, right? This once again can be a for loop nor a while loop, right? This is how auto-indexed tunnel looks like, right? Depending upon the data type you are connecting, you can see the color of the braces. You can see like an array symbol, what you use in your C program, you can see that. So it gets configured to the according color, right? So basically you would see a solid color in your normal tunnels. Yesterday we were trying to use it, an input tunnel or an output tunnel. You can see a solid, purely colored tunnel will be visible, whereas this is not going to be in that way, right? This is not going to be in that way. If you can also convert it into a normal tunnel by right clicking on that auto indexing tunnel and choosing an option called as disable indexing. By doing this, what happens is whatever auto index data will be converted into a normal tunnel. Normal tunnel information. I'll just tell you what is the auto indexing tunnel and what is a normal tunnel. No, I'll just tell you that. So when you try to create an auto indexing tunnel, you can see there is an array which I have connected to the frame of your frame of your for loop, right? So when you do this, now the for loop doesn't need n to be connected. Your n is nothing but your loop count. You don't want to specify how many times your loop has supposed to run. What happens is when you use an auto index tunnel, I repeat, when you use an auto index tunnel, the array will try to make the loop understand how many times it's supposed to execute. How it is going to learn is nothing but depending upon the number of elements on the array, the loop will iterate for that particular number of times. I repeat it, if your array have 5 data it has, 5 elements it has, your loop will iterate for 5 times. If you increase the number of elements in the array or decrease it, accordingly the loop is also going to execute. So by doing this, what happens is you don't want to specify how many number of times a loop is supposed to execute through n terminal. It is not needed. Now many people might come up with a question like, let me say I have wired 10 here and the array is having 5 information, right? Array is having 5 elements and I'm passing a value 10 to my n, which is going to work because your array suggests your loop to run for 5 times and the n terminal suggests your loop to run for 10 times, right? Which is going to execute. Usually for loop prefers executing the least amount of time. Like if this is going to be preferring 10 times and your array is going to prefer 5 times, your loop will decide to go for 5 times only, right? Sometimes it happens that you connect 2 arrays, right? This cannot be only one array. Sometimes you have one more array nearby to this and connect one more auto indexing tunnel which has a different number. once again what happens is your loop prefers to run for the least amount of time. If it is 5 in this array number 1 has 5 elements, array number 2 has 10 elements, once again it goes with the least number of times. The loop will iterate for the least number of times and it stops automatically, right? So now coming back to this, I'm going to show you what happens in an auto indexing array. Auto indexing tunnel. What is it going to do? See, once again, when I talk about tunnel, normal tunnel or auto indexing tunnel, it basically has two types. One is input tunnel and one is output tunnel. What is the input tunnel? Which brings the data from outside to inside of the loop. Basically, it's called as a input tunnel. And output tunnel is something which takes the data outside the loop. That's basically called as an output tunnel, right? So what happens in an input tunnel? Let me first tell you what happens on the input tunnel first. Here you can see there is an input tunnel, right? What is going to happen is, now let me say, for example, this array is having 6 elements. I repeat, if this array is having 6 elements, the loop will iterate for 6 times. Am I right? The loop will iterate for 6 times. And what this auto indexing tunnel does is it converts a one-dimensional data into a scalar data. I repeat it, your auto indexing input tunnel will break dimension. When I say break dimension, what it happens is a 1D data will convert into a scalar data, right? So since the loop is iterating for 6th time, what this auto indexing tunnel does is it will try to push the elements one by one into the loop, right? So first time the loop execute, it pushes a first element. You know how iteration works, right? Iteration gives you 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. It keeps giving in that way. Whereas auto indexing tunnel will give not the sequence of 0, 1 and 2. It rather gives the elements in the array. It gives the first element, second element, third, fourth, fifth. So what happens is you can process each and every element of the array one by one, iteration by iteration, right? So this allows you to do a manipulation one by one, right? Same way, your auto indexing tunnel on the output side will do the reverse. What it does? A scalar data will get converted into one-dimensional data. So how it's going to work is, this loop is iterating 6 times, am I right? This is a constant, a random number generator function which randomly generate a number. There's a function in LabVIEW which can generate a number randomly. Every time it's like a dice. You throw a dice, you get a random number, right? So first time when the loop runs, it throws a dice and gives a number. Second time another number, third time another number. By this, what happens is each and every data passes in this wire one by one, iteration by iteration. First data, second data, third data. 6 times the data will pass. This auto indexing tunnel will collect them all. And give you an array of 6 elements. So who will decide how many elements are there in this array? It depends the number of time the loop runs. If the loop is iterating 6 times, this wire will iterate 6 times, and this auto indexing tunnel will collect 6 elements and it pass it to the array, and this array will have 6 elements, right? And what will be in this array? It's going to be the different data being generated by the random number data. First element will be the first iterated data. Second element will be the second iterated data, right? In case if you connect this iteration terminal to this auto indexing tunnel, you're going to have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 in indexed fashion, right? So that's how basically your auto indexing tunnel in input side and output side basically works, right? I'll just quickly show a demo. Before that, I'm also going to tell you how two audible, because I got a notification that the connection is lost. Are you people, am I audible to you people? Just give me a confirmation, somebody, whether you people can see me. Okay, so I got a confirmation. Thank you so much, everyone. If there is any issues, please let me know in the comment section. I'll just try to do it. So I'll just quickly tell you what I was just telling about this two-dimensional creation. So how do you create a two-dimensional array with loops? Is you use nested for loop. When I say nested for loop, you have a for loop inside which you have one more for loop, right? So you can see innermost loop will run for 4 times, innermost loop will run for 6 times. So what happens is this keeps combinations. That's what you get from here, right? And this outer loop will iterate for 4 times. So first iteration 6 data, second iteration 6 data, third iteration 6 data, fourth iteration 6 data. They get formed into a row information. So you have 4 rows and 6 columns. This is how you create a two-dimensional array, right? So you can see the difference in their size of the wire. The size of the wire try to suggest you how much data a particular dimensional array is carrying. So if this is a scalar information, looks normal. This is a one-dimensional information, looks bit thicker. And this is a two-dimensional array which you can see a double line, right? You'll be able to see a double line, fine. So this is how a two-dimensional array will be created. So I'll just quickly jump into a demo. I'll just try to create, I'll take a new VI. I'll try to create you a for loop along with the auto indexing tunnel. Fine. I'm just creating a for loop, and I'm going to quickly configure a one-dimensional array. I'm going to quickly configure a one-dimensional array and quickly give a data like 2, 6, 1, randomly some numbers 2, right? So what is going to happen is, just watch everyone. So when I pass it like this, you can see there is a error, there is an error in your code. I told you in the very first beginning, there will be an error if a wire is broken. I mean the run button is broken. When I click on this, you can see for loop n is not wired, right? For loop n is not wired. It means that you are supposed to wire n value. Only then the loop will understand how many times it's supposed to execute, right? Rather than this, you can see the error itself suggests you there is no indexing input also. There is no n wire, and also there is no indexing input also, which means that either you're supposed to say how many times the n should execute, or you should basically, you should basically say connect a auto indexing tunnel like this, right? Now you can see the error is fine. You don't have error. And how many times the loop is going to run? To the size of the array, to the number of elements in this array. You can see that you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the loop will iterate for the 5 times, right? So what I'll do is, from here, I'll directly connect it like this, right? So you can see that the wire is different. You can see that this is a one-dimensional information. This is a scalar information, right? Either I can directly wire it and create an indicator. By doing this, what happens is, the same information, I'm going to name it as input array, and this I'm going to name it as output array, right? So what happens is, I'll highlight this execution. Just please watch here, everyone. I'll highlight this execution and run it once. You can see there'll be 5 elements coming. 2 the first element, 6 the second element, 1, 7, 2 all goes collects here and comes out as a complete array information. Now, as I told you yesterday, once again, you people can perform any task inside this. Like for example, I want to multiply, right, this with my iteration value, right? You might have a correction dot. The reason why you have a correction dot is your array is of different data type, and your iteration is also of different data type. Now my intention is not about concentrating on this correction. Let it be. Still it's going to work. I'm going to connect it like this. Right? So what happens is, very first iteration, 2 comes here, 0 comes here, so 0, any number into 0 is 0, then 6 into 1, then 1 into 2, then 7 into 3, and 2 into 4. This is what you're going to get. Just watch, I'll highlight it again. You'll see that the data flow one by one get assessed and get manipulated, and you get the output directly. Right? Yes. So what happens is, this was multiplied with 0, this was multiplied with 1, with 2, and with 3. It goes in that way. This is how your auto indexing tunnel basically works. What it does is, input auto indexing tunnel will break a dimension, which means that from 1D it turns into scalar, whereas here it collects the information. From a scalar it turns into a one-dimensional. This is how basically your auto index tunnel basically works. Right? If you ask me where you'll be using this much, I've seen this being used in most of your data acquisition system, where you acquire multiple samples. When you acquire multiple samples, what it happens is, it gives a information of samples. It can be 1,000 samples, or it can be any number of samples you are trying to acquire at a time. And once you acquire, you want to do some process to it. So you get an array information from your hardware, and you collect it in an array format, and you try to do any process to it. You can use in that way. Or another case of where you can use a array will be in image processing, because when I talk about an image, right, an image is something where it's a formation of pixels formed by a pixel, and which are arranged in a two-dimensional information, right? So you can see that they are arranged in two-dimensional. So you can once again take the pixels one by one using auto indexing tunnel, use your loops, and make sure you can do some process to your array. I mean, array is nothing but your images, which is converted into pixel format, right? So moving further, by this I'm just completing my section 1. I'll just move directly to your section 2. Section 2 comes to your clustering, right? Clusterings are basically used to confine your multiple data types. If arrays are actually used to club your single data type. If you want, single data type, I mean collection of single data type is going to be an array. Collection of multiple data type is going to be your clusters. So moving to a cluster, you can group data elements of mixed type. Your mixed data type can be clubbed together. You can see this is a cluster. You can see this is a cluster where you can see the cluster holds a string information, a numeric information, and also a Boolean information, right? So it is more similar to your record or struct in your textual programming language, yeah, where it can collect multiple data types. Fine. And one advantage of your clusters is, rather than passing these informations in your block diagram as an individual data, like your name or your graduated or age, this record information, right? When you are trying to pass it, you will have multiple wires, right? So by using them as a cluster, you will see that you'll be using only one wire. This one wire will carry all the informations together, and you can use some functions. I'm going to show you next in upcoming slides. I'm going to show you how these functions can be used to break the data, or you can try to assemble the data into your cluster, right? I'm going to show you that. Cluster basically is not having any functionality. Basically it doesn't have much functionality. The ultimate reason of reason to use a cluster is to avoid more wire clutters, so that not all the informations are to be used individually and a lot of wires usually used to pass. Rather we can use a cluster, so it's like a purse where you put all the individual items together and hold it in a single bag. It's going to be like that. Whenever you need a particular object to be used, you can call them whenever you need it using particular functions. I'm going to show you that. So if you compare a cluster with array, so arrays basically use a single data type. Only one particular data type can be handled at a time. Whereas coming to a cluster, it can have multiple data types, right? So one thing about a cluster and array, common thing about a cluster and array is they can use both. They can be used as a control or an indicator, not a problem, but either a control or an indicator, not both at a time, right? Depending upon what first object you drop inside an array, I showed you, right? Depending on the first object you drop inside an array, it will be either configured as a control or indicator of that particular data type, right? Same as such, your cluster also, right? Depending upon the first object you drop inside a cluster, I'm going to show you how to create it anyway. So depending upon the first object you drag and drop into your cluster converts itself to that particular object, control or indicator. So creating your cluster, how it's going to be done is, it's going to be more similar to the way how we did it for your array. Yes. So what I can do is I can drag and drop a cluster shell from the front panel and drag and drop any data type into it one by one. Before what happens is I drag and drop in an array. What I do is I drag and drop one particular object and I pull it and resize the elements, resize the array size. Whereas coming back to your cluster, you are supposed to individually drag and drop the objects one by one. If first object, whatever you want is numeric or string, you drag and drop them one by one. And by dragging and dropping one by one, it comes to, I'll just move to the next one. I'll come back to the cluster, constant again. I'll talk about this order. Depending upon the object you drag and drop, they basically create an order. So the object which you drag and drop first will be considered as a order. The object will be the index of 0, right? So the second one will be 1, 2, 3. It keeps on going, right? So if you ask me what is the importance of this, whenever you try to pull an object outside from a cluster, so this orders will matter a lot, right? This orders will matter a lot. It is basically the position where a particular object is placed on the shell, right? The order in which you drag and drop it suggests the order of a cluster. I'll show you how to reorder it if you want. And coming back to the cluster constant, once again it's going to be similar the way of how you did it for your array. You come to the block diagram, you drag and drop a cluster constant and drag and drop objects one by one in whatever sequence you wanted. You can drag and drop it, and depending upon the order you drag and drop it, the objects also will get ordered. The positions will be manipulated accordingly. Fine. So this is how you basically create a cluster, and you can also do them programmatically. Not always you can drag and drop them manually. You can also use a function called as bundle to assemble all the individual data into a cluster, right? You can see there is a function called as bundle. I'll show you a demo anyway. I have a function called as bundle where you can see there is a individual objects, right? You're trying to pass them one by one, and you can see that it's ABC, I32 and TNF, which means that they get bundled based on the data type, right? So they get bundled based on the data type, and they form a cluster automatically. And once again, if you ask me what is the order, depending upon which is the first terminal, second terminal, and third terminal, they decide the order of the cluster. And once again, when you want to deassemble these clusters, once again they come out basically on their orders. This is why it's very important. If you ask me what is the much importance, now you can see I can try to use same data type many times. Let me say there is a I32 data, right? I can use it multiple times. I can drag this for multiple terminals and I can keep feeding much information into it. In those cases, order plays a vital role. Order plays a vital role, right? So modifying a cluster, if you have a ready-made cluster, this previous option is like creating a cluster. What happens is the individual data are clubbed back into a cluster. They are assembled into a cluster. There's a next method is going to be modifying a cluster. If you have a cluster, how to modify a particular element into it. For that, you use a function called as bundle by name. Whereas here you can see they are getting accessed based on their labels. You can see this is new command, right? You can see the command, or this is a new function. You can see the name of the function, right? Whereas coming to a bundle, you can see they are getting clubbed based on a data type, right? You can also use bundle to modify them. You have to pass the reference cluster. At the top, you have a terminal for reference cluster. You pass the reference cluster. So once you pass the reference cluster, this bundle by name or this bundle function, both of these items, what they do is they access the object inside this input cluster. Even here, it accesses the object inside input cluster and tries to allow you to manipulate the new value. So let me say in this particular first example, what I've been showing you, I have two information. For example, I have two information, a new command and new function is inside this input cluster. When I pass it like this as a reference, I can feed a new information. I can change the value. I can pass a new string data. This is a pink color string data. I can pass a new data here and new number also here. The output will be the same cluster but different value. Same cluster with different values. A new value which are being trying to pass here. Same as such here. You can pass it. Same thing, but only difference between here is this give you more readability. Whatever name you have inside the cluster, individual objects information will be basically accessed here, whereas here it's going to be a data type. In case if you have a repetitive data types inside a cluster, then you can also see repetitive objects being suggested. But you can once again access them based on their orders. Whatever object you drag and drop inside this input cluster, the same order will be maintained here also, right? So after assembling, coming back to the deassembling, right? Once again, you have two functions to do is one is unbundle and one is unbundle by name. What they are going to do, as soon as you pass a cluster, input cluster to it, it is going to access the objects inside this. So this cluster is actually having name, age, employed and company name, which means that it has two string information, name and company name as string information. That's why you can see first one is ABC, last one is ABC, both are string information. Then you have age, then you have employed. You can see TF for your employed and DBL for your age, right? So here comes a problem. You will not be knowing what is you can arrange them wherever you want it inside a cluster, the way you want it. You can keep them side by side, or you can keep them wherever you really want it. It's going to be very difficult for anybody to understand whether this is going to be a company name or whether this is going to be a company name. It becomes more complex when you have multiple same data types inside a same cluster, inside a one cluster, right? When coming back to unbundled by name, this has a better readability where you can see you can pick them using their name. You can see the name. You can see the name itself is unbundled by name, right? So they basically take a reference of their label. So you can see the label here is name. So it accesses it through the label. If I change the label here, and it gets updated here also, because this function basically accesses what is inside this cluster, right? And whatever you are seeing here is the front panel of this same applicant cluster, right? So I think if this is much clear, I can move into the demonstration of how to create a cluster and how to try to access them. Take a new VI, right? So I'm going to show you how to create a cluster. I go to arrays, matrix and cluster, in which I used the array before. Now I'm going to use a cluster, drag and drop a cluster. Fine. So basically it is an cluster shell. I can pull some objects into this. You can see I can drag and drop. Just keep the track of the order which I placed. The number one, I'm just going to name it as A, for example. This is going to be A. I drag and drop A inside first. Yes. Then I take a different object, right? I'm going to name it as switch, for example, right? And I'm going to drop switch next. Fine. Then I'm going to drag and drop another numeric, namely B. Drag and drop it inside. And then I take a string and I'm going to name it as character. Right, character information. I'll drag and drop it inside like this. So you can see the items are basically overlapping. So to avoid them, you can resize the cluster like this, place them wherever you wish to place it. Right. So I'm just gonna place them the wish I really want. I can even make it look like this. Right. So this is how I create a information, cluster information. Let it be the name of cluster itself. You can see the entire items are named as cluster. It can be even named as all info. I'm just going to name it as all info, right? So this particular cluster is named as all info, and each individual object also will have their own labels, right? So now I'm going to show you how this basically use unbundle by name. I'm going to use unbundle by name and drag and drop it, and I connect it from here to here. You can see I can pull it like this so that I can access them based on their name. You can see depending upon the object I drag and drop it, you can see the order of them. You can see the order of them. So here the very important thing is I'm accessing them based on their labels. Same way, I'll right click on the block diagram, go to cluster palette, in which I have unbundle function. I drag and drop unbundle function and connect it like this. You can see they are totally coming out, and you can see they are basically deassembled based on their data types. You can see there are 2 DBL informations. The reason is I have 2 numeric informations here, right? And by this mean what happens is you can access them individually, one by one, right? Individual data can be accessed. So ultimately what happens is I don't want to use multiple clutter wires, right? Basically from here, if I have multiple clutter wires, that can be avoided by using a cluster, fine? And same thing is going to be held for your bundle function and bundle by name function, right? Especially an array, array has a lot of functions to access. But coming back to your cluster, you basically have only 4 informations. Bundle, unbundle, bundle by name, and unbundle by name. These are the 4 functions you regularly use. Ultimately, they are useful only to assemble a data or modify a data in a cluster and deassemble them. That is all the need is. But technically, we don't have much need for a cluster. Rather, array have more technical needs. Cluster basically makes sure that you don't want to use much of the wires in your block diagram. And one more thing is, tomorrow we'll be talking about a topic which is creating a modular VIs. I'll also be showing you how to create modular VIs, in which when you create a modular VI, a VI will turn into a function, right? I'm going to show you how to design a particular your own function. You can see that, let me say in array you have a number of functions, right? You can also create your own function, right? You can also create your own function depending upon whatever you use, right? Your mathematical calculations can be converted into a function, and you can drag and drop it from here. You can place it whenever you want, and you can drag and drop it. I'll be showing you that also tomorrow. So there, if you see, you should also decide how many number of terminals a particular function should have, right? Even there you can see cluster will be very helpful, where you can pass one particular terminal as a cluster rather than having n number of individual object terminals. Terminals are nothing but, when I drag and drop a function, you have an input terminal, output terminal, right? So rather than using this way, I'm going to give a cluster. So many data are passing into this object through a single wire. Inside this, I can even try to do a program to break them one by one, right? Which we'll be seeing tomorrow. So if there is any doubt, if there is no doubt, I'll just move on to the next one. Next we are going to see is string data type, right? This is not going to take much time, but this is going to be useful for my, it's going to be helpful for my tomorrow's topic, which I'm going to cover, right? So I think, string can be directly explained with the demonstration. I'll just directly go to the demonstration, right? Right, coming back to a string. Once again, strings are exactly like your numeric or boolean, but this is going to be more of, you can see there's a string palette. This is more like a character information. So, you can just give character information like A, B, C, D, or special characters. It can take numbers, like in string format, it can take anything. Like whatever you see in your keyboard, those typing items can be used. I'll drag and drop a string control. You can also have a string indicator, right? String control, string indicator, you can usually have that, right? So you can see this is a string control, this is a string indicator. I'm going to name it as input string, and this is going to be a output string. Somewhere I can just closely relate your strings with your arrays. If you ask me why, right? See, your arrays have a lot of functions. In arrays, you have a lot of functions, right? How to use these functions is nothing but you can drag and, let me say, if you want to understand how to use this array function, right? What you can do is you can drag and drop and understand what those terminals are, and by this you can understand. Same like that, you have n number of functions for your string. You have n number of functions for your string. I can also once again drag and drop particular function in a string. Like for example, let me say I'm gonna take reverse string. Inside additional string function, you have reverse string. If I drag and drop it, right, I touch this terminal, it takes a string input and this gives a reversed data. If I say hello, right, and run this program, you can see this function converts all the string in reverse and gives me the same. So you people can use these functions for palindrome or maybe whatever functions you want to do. It will be useful. Most of the time they use a string is in hardware, especially when it comes to hardware. We can use this for visa communication. When I say visa communication, it's a serial communication where you write the information in a textual commands, right? When you can use them in a textual command, you use a palette called as visa. Visa will be somewhere like placed in instrument IO. There you'll be able to see visa. So you can read and write those information. So you can also have serial communication. I mean your GPIB instrument control. You have a number of hardware interfaces where most of the time we'll be configuring them, or we'll be trying to mention which channel you want to acquire or which information you want to acquire through a string information. So you can specify them, because when I talk about channel, right, it will be analog input or digital input. 1, 2, 3, it will be numbered. So you are supposed to specify both number and character together. So DIO 0, DIO 1, you want to specify those information, and sometimes command. You know, your whatever your APIs you have. APIs are like the functions, whatever you're using to access them. They usually take input of your strings, right? So if you ask me quickly how to design a quick application on this, I'll just show you how this is going to be a palindrome. Let me say I have reverse, this is the original string, this is a reverse string, right? If I want to do a palindrome, what I do is I go to comparison, I just check whether they are equal, right? So I'm just going to check this reverse string and the input string are equal, right? So this, just understand the data flow, So what happens is the input string, let me say hello, which I typed, will pass from this wire. It will also pass to the second terminal of your equal to symbol, and the reverse, whatever maybe the reverse is going to pass to the first terminal, right? And now I'm going to have a Boolean output because it compares and gives me true if both the inputs are same, right? So what I'll do is I'll right click, create indicator. So I'll connect this here. So this is going to say whether my object is palindrome or not. Sorry with the spelling. So I'm going to say it's a palindrome or not. It's a very simple application, I take the input string, reverse it, and check whether they are same, right? So when I run this program, you can see it gives a false. It is false, right? So if I say something like MADAM, madam, right, it says it's a palindrome, right? So it's a very simple application. This is how you'll be using most of the functions. Now if you ask me the other functions, there are some bit complex functions. Let me say string subset, for example. I'm going to show you how to learn yourself to use this function, right? So when I touch this terminal, you can see it pops out that small tip strip. Every time when you touch a terminal, it pops out a small tip strip below it, right? So when I touch this, it says it's a string input you're supposed to pass, and even the color suggests what data you're supposed to pass to the particular terminal, right? And also when I touch the second one, it says offset, and you can see there's something written as 0 inside the bracket, which means that if you leave it unwired, by default it will take a value 0. And same coming to it says the length, right? The name I'll just give the visible label to it. So this is nothing but string subset, okay? So for example, what I'll do is I'll just quickly show a demo here. I'll take the same input, right? Madam is the input here. I can say which is the offset. I want a subset of this input string madam, right? I want the DAM, DAM. This is what I want to have, right? So I'm going to specify what is the index, right? I told you always, offset is nothing but an index. This is going to be 0, 1, and 2. So what I'll do is I'm going to say 2, and the length, you can see length by default it is taking rest. Rest is nothing but the remaining all the data, right? So if I say, for example, constant, once again 2, for example, or let me say this 1 and this is 2. What you'll be expecting the output to be is from the offset, I'll just place it here, from the offset number 1, because this is nothing but your offset. From the offset number 1, you are trying to subset 2 elements. The length is going to be 2, which is going to be subsetted. So you can see A and D is coming out, because you can see this is offset 0, offset 1, right? I'm expecting it to give the offset from offset number 1, and you can see it is taking 2 datas. If I say 3 here, the length will be 3, and I will run this, you can see 3 elements are passing out. Right? By this method, I can just keep subsetting the information outside. So this is how basically you learn a function. So with this, I just try to complete today's session, and you people can feel free to write your queries in the comment section. We'll be trying to handling them. And yes, I want you all to stay home again, and you can also see this videos. It's available. This video will be available till tomorrow's next session. You can just see them, not an issue. So I want you all to practice. That's very important. Practicing makes you people more confident on a subject. I told you as such, So try practicing more. Whatever you see on the video, whatever I try to show you, just practice. You can also have time. Now this is just a 1 hour session, and if you see here in LabVIEW, right? For example, if I just try to show you this, you can see palette, which is I'm trying to work only with this programming palette. I'm not going beyond anything beyond this, because I'm trying to show the basics, with LabVIEW. But I have an option to just expand this, right? So you can see n number of palette. If I go to measurement, you can see there are n number of functions related to this. When I say DACMS, these are functions to acquire a signal. You can choose which channel, and you can say how to trigger and everything. And something like that, for example, if I go for data communication, let me say protocol, you can see TCP/IP protocol, serial communication protocol. There are n number of things available, right? So I'm trying to enable you people to understand the basics, but there are a lot you people supposed to learn. A lot you people supposed to learn in this tool. This is a very huge amount of information available. Or the use case of LabVIEW is very big, that you people should start practicing in depth. Fine. So hope this 5 days will be useful for you in exploring the functions of LabVIEW and make you people far better, right? So okay, all the very best to everyone, and see you people tomorrow, and we'll come up with new topics. And tomorrow we are planning to do some more even high-funder topics, where we'll be designing modular VIs, and we'll also try to see how to log informations. Tomorrow we are going to see how to log the informations also, right? Whatever I try to access here in LabVIEW, I want to write it into Excel sheet. Maybe I will log it on an Excel sheet, or anywhere third-party sheets or third-party files I want to access it, or read it from there and bring it to LabVIEW. Let me say you save a sample information, an array of sample information is saved in Excel sheet. You want to call it into LabVIEW and do some process into it. How we will be trying to interfacing your LabVIEW with the third-party files. I'll be trying to show you to access the data only, not anything else. So I'll be trying to show you how to do that tomorrow. So we are getting depth into the topics. So I want you to be sure that you people will be using it in that format, right? And we'll be using the string also more. That's the reason, because when I talk about file, usually you write not only numbers, sometimes you even tend to write some character informations into a file. So I'll be trying to use string and numbers tomorrow much, right? And also I'll be showing you how to create modular applications. Model applications is a very quick access to a new logics, right? You'll be understanding that in well depth when I just start doing it tomorrow, right? All the very best, everyone. Have a nice day. Hope we'll see you tomorrow, and try practicing it. Thank you so much. I'll just end up the stream right now. Thank you.